Hello, this is Karen Hudis, and I'm going to introduce Nick Blaine to you. We're sitting in Cabell County, West Virginia, and Nick is the descendant from 5 generations ago of the second governor. And the reason I know Nick is he's the one who told me about the Moscow State University website, Chronology, and in addition, Nick has been involved with the National Liberty Alliance, and the two of us have been working together. Nick called me just at the moment that I was about to go into the spring meetings at the World Bank and IMF, and it was a good thing he called me because I was absolutely frightened. There was so much riding on what was going to happen, and we had a brief conversation. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So without further ado, I guess the first question I have, Nick, is what is it that you think is the most important thing going on right now?
I think that it seems, I heard this from a commentator, there's many brick walls, but those brick walls are paper thin. And it just seems your audience is growing. The handful of people that I talk to, it seems like people know something's up. I can't say that everybody is as aware as they should be, but it does seem that the general subconscious of everybody I talk to knows what's up. And we have this major presidential election happening, and it seems like a majority of the people, nobody is happy with anybody who's running for president right now, and they may have an idea of who they like, but deep down I think they really know that there's something up. And people need to be open to what is truth in this world, in this country, in this world, and not just in this world, but in your towns. I mean, I could bring up something. I'm in Huntington, West Virginia. The very first page of the City of Huntington charter, you can go online and look at your own municipal charter. Ours was ratified, it was approved in 1987, I believe, and the very first line says, the inhabitants of the City of Huntington, blah, 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 shall remain a corporation. So if I live in Huntington and as an inhabitant of Huntington, I am a corporation, and it says it right there on the very first line of the charter of the City of Huntington. So, and of course, the idea of the 14th Amendment being a United States citizen subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, and with a lot of the people watching this can do their own research. If you're watching this and you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's one of the most important things you can do is to gather the knowledge, and nobody is your boss. You are your own boss. You have to do this yourself, and it takes a lot of work. And I'm still new. I'm still only I'm just going to say 3 years into trying to gather the truth for myself and for others. But I'm a novice at this, and I know Ms. Hudis has been at this since.
Call me Karen.
Yeah, Karen at least since 2007 and before and prior to that, and don't be full of yourself. And what I mean by that is, a lot of people think they know things, and they put up a filter when you hear new information. It's that cognitive dissonance. A lot of truth seekers are going to tell you about cognitive dissonance, and be aware of that when you're thinking about new information that maybe makes you feel scared or makes you feel nervous and you don't want to hear about these things. We were just talking about this, and a majority of people are not listening. And without going on too long about all this, I just say that. I mean, be open-minded with what is true and be discerning. And if you're a believer in a higher power, you need to be praying about it. And the Lord says that anything you ask and ye shall receive. And pray for wisdom, pray for discernment in your own prayers, and And I believe that the Lord will show you what is true and what is not true.
When you speak to people who are clueless about what you consider the truth to be, how does that conversation go?
It's very short usually, unless I've had a glass of wine or two. But if it's something that, it depends on the situation. If it's in passing, in other words, if it's just, especially the politics are going on right now. Everybody wants to know which one. I don't even want to say their names, but which one are you going to go for? And when that kind of conversation comes up, I like to bring up something that's real. For instance, the City of Huntington Charter. I've said that to multiple people who live here. That's a very that's a big problem. I think if you live in a municipality. The municipality only exists because you live there, and that's fine and good. But on top of that, it says later that this charter shall be interpreted in favor of the city. So it's meant for the Articles of Incorporation. I'm just living here. I'm just trying to work and go to school, to go to church, to do whatever everybody does. I mean, everybody's just trying to live here. Why do I have to have some type of connection, a corporate, something that I had no idea about? And why don't they tell us that? They don't even, it should be in the front page headlines of our local paper that's there. So,
well, you would realize who's owning the paper and what they consider to be suitable for publication.
Mm-hmm. I've researched the local paper. I mean, I love this area. I love this town. And you mentioned I have, it's the governor of Virginia in 1799 was William H. Cabell, and he had some land over here pointing this way in the direction of this area where he had some land in the late 1700s. He might have met George Washington. I don't know the whole history, but his name was William H. Cabell, and that's who Cabell County is named after. So I can safely say I have my roots here, and it makes me mad, but more than that, it makes me kind of sad to know that the town I grew up in has put up this lie of, I call it a lie, it's misdirection. You're part of the corporation. And going on about the newspapers, this newspaper, I know firsthand, this newspaper was bought and sold in my lifetime, and it's been bought and sold. It's one of the oldest papers in the state, but not really, because it's not even the same ownership. And I could even go on about the television station. I won't mention their names, but the people who live here know. It's a conglomerate, and they're not telling people the truth. I've had conversations with them. I actually called them, and they know what's up, and that's kind of how that conversation goes. Some people, if you confront them, they ignore you. But on and on about that.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how you found out about this website from Moscow State University?
Sure. I think the best thing is to show, because you weren't aware that it was actually books, and this is book 1 and 2, and there are 5 more, so I only have the first 2, and mine's a bit used. It's not just the website. He put up the website because his name is Anatoly Fomenko. I've never met the professor, but I've emailed him. He corresponded back, and he seems very down to earth, if we can say that. His research is actually very technical. I'm not a mathematician, but I am fascinated by mathematics, but by no means am I a mathematician. And you probably won't be able to see much of this, but the book is full of illustrations, and then later on there's maps, ancient maps, maps of from the Renaissance and Middle Ages. Later on are the graphs, and you can just see how technical. I mean, this is not somebody writing fiction in their basement hoping that they're going to sell books. This is a serious scholar who is doing legitimate scientific work. The name is History, Fiction, or Science. And the reason that has the title Fiction or Science is because it really is a science. It's chronology is the science. So the book opens up and talks about how chronology was, in fact, a branch of science. It was not called history. It was called chronology. And the main character in the Middle Ages was a gentleman named Scaliger. I've heard that Scaliger may have been a Jesuit, but there was another successor named Petravius who was a Jesuit, so we can add that in there. But it was deliberately falsified. The history, you have to think about the Middle Ages. There was no timekeeping, especially for the peasantry and the people. We sit around and say, what time is it? But they had no timekeeping. So it was maybe very easy in the years 1500s, 1600s to make a claim that some institution had been around for 1,000 years or more prior to that. The generations of people who lived at that time maybe were susceptible to being misdirected and misled, especially with the power of reading, because hardly anybody read at that time. Where, Scaliger was writing these for the elite groups of those days, and you and I, sitting here in our normal lives, may not have been able to read in that century. So, we were discussing whether we were going to talk a bunch about this. I could probably go on about it, and I don't know. I'm not an expert, but you go to the website, and I know you posted it. I don't know it off my head, but the whole idea is that we don't know what our true history was. That's what if I can say the strongest theme is that we don't know. We can't be sure, and the proof that the other side claims is actually probably not true. Scaliger was compiling a chronology of the ancient texts, what he quote-unquote called ancient texts, that a lot of that was just his arbitrary opinion. Write this down. This paper came from 800 BC. This paper came from, 1600 BC. And a lot of it was just his own whims and what he decided to date things. It's very technical in terms of statistics, mathematical statistics, and Fomenko actually started the project in the late 70s, about 77 or 78, dealing with astronomy and the datings of astronomical events like eclipses. I don't want to go into too much detail and say something that's not correct. You need to research it yourself, but there's something called the parameter D, which is, if you look at all of the eclipses in history, and you record them and put them on a graph, you'll see that at some point in the ancient past, between the years 1600 and 800 AD, that the graph makes this weird jump. And one of the hypotheses is, well, there's some type of extra gravitational motion in the Earth-Moon system. In other words, somehow magically the Moon for 600 years was faster and then slowed back down. And we both know that's impossible. So what Fomenko actually did was said, well, let's move those eclipses a little closer to us in the future, and guess what? The graph made a straight line, as it should, because the Moon and the Earth have never changed their speeds. There's never been, at least in this history, there's never been a sudden movement in the acceleration of the Moon. So it's very interesting. I mean, I made some notes, but I can make those available if you'd like, or whatnot.
We can put them in the teleprompter.
Sure.
If we do this on DCTV.
Okay.
For me, the takeaway from this is that everybody is on board. Everybody is responsible, because we're all living in this planet, and it's all up to each individual one of us. And some of us are not really tuned in to what's going on. We're all facing the same fate. We're all joined together in the same fate. If there's a World War III, we're all going to be affected by that, and some of us are doing more than others. And I would say that Nick, we're really all dependent on Nick, and Nick has been pulling us through. That was my experience when you called me, because it's a very lonely business when you're standing in for everybody and you're responsible for everybody, and you're not sure you're going to manage to do what needs to be done for everybody. And it's always a wonderful experience to know that, no, I'm not alone. I'm getting all the help I need. And Nick has certainly been giving me a lot of help.
I appreciate that. Well, it's reciprocal and mutual. And I think the people who are watching this who want to do something, they need to say a prayer about it. I mean, I know we have a lot of different people in the audience, but if you say prayers about it, because I really believe that you will find what you need to do within you. The Lord will show you through yourself. So I know you're going to head out and talk to Betsy, if we say that, Betsy Banfield Malone. Sorry.
Yes.
Anyways,
Betsy Banfield Malone.
Yeah, the collective consciousness, and it's not a fairy tale. You know, they unfortunately don't teach enough of it in our educational system, and I really believe every single one of us has a relationship with the spiritual. So it's something that you are going to find in yourself. There's something I did want to say is that I believe this: everybody is an expert in something. I'm a teacher. You have to constantly encourage young ones. You may not be the expert in topic A, but you will be an expert somewhere along something in your life. You are the best at that in your life. Something in your life, you're the best, better than anybody else at something. And I would even venture to say more than one thing. Don't set your bar too low. There might be more than one thing that you're the best at, more than anybody else in the world. But the flip side of that coin is there are many things that you are by far not the best at in the world. And I think that is where in our lives we need to work on those things we're not the best. Bring that up. Before we can move this forward, we have to bring this one up so that we can move, we can be a balanced living person. And that's what I want to say about that.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
I think we've done it.
Okay. Yeah.